I get this. I just killed a fly with Cole's crawling insect killer.
What? That's false advertising.
Well, no, it's for false use
Okay.
because this is meant for creepy crawlies.
And flies
Kills
aren't
insects.
creepy or crawly.
Well, it's meant to work on cockroaches, spiders, ants, carpet beetles,
What?
fleas, cloth moths, silverfish, what? And bed bugs. And I used it on a fly, and let me tell you,
It'd be amazing if like halfway through it's like orca. Like wow, they're covering all their bases.
well, the silverfish looks like a beetle, so I'm assuming that
Yeah, it
is
is
the name
a
of
it's
some
like
sort
a
of
little.
beetle. Oh, you know it.
Everyone knows the silverfish.
Well, sounds delicious. I used it on a fly, and it's quite cruel. I don't know. Have you ever like sprayed a fly with killer or any insect with insect killer, and then just watch it kind of absorb the spray, and then just kind of spaz out,
Yeah,
and then just
actually
go
I
like
prefer to
lose
get
its
the
mind.
I prefer to get the weaker fly sprays just so it prolongs their pain because I feel like if you've really sort of invaded my space, you've caused me an irritate, you've been buzzing around the room, I deserve to get you back an equivalent amount of time that I was annoyed by you flitting around the head or like bumping into the window and struggling like I'm holding the window open and you keep fucking hitting the glass. I think there should be a reciprocal amount of pain inflicted. So I go for the weaker and just watch them squirm.
I would not equate death with the pain that you feel, the annoyance that you feel of having a bzzz in the room that you're in.
I see it both ways.
I don't see it both ways, and I'm a better person than you. I think that's clear.
Wow.
But it's like quite an interesting, like, not to make everything, philosophical or existential.
That's not
but
what this
like
podcast is for.
exactly. But you are just spraying a living creature and
Like a
then just watching
neurotoxin.
it. But this is interesting. Like, yeah, you are spraying a living creature, but it's what is fascinating to me is that its instinct is still to survive. If you swat a spider or bang its web, it retreats. And so, like, its instinct is to survive. And if if it has a survival instinct, does that not represent some sort of consciousness, or should that not just give us some pause for thought? Because if something is wanting to, like, not die, actively not die, shouldn't we be thinking about that a little bit deeper than just like, bzz, you're dead, I'm less annoyed?
This is interesting that this came about because you've already murdered the fly. Like this, you're having this conversation now after the moment in which you went and reached for it, did the deed, and now this is like the second act of the movie where you're racked with guilt and questioning everything you've done, your life choices that led to this point. Like the answer to me
I want my
is
cake and I eat it too. Like,
exactly.
I'm always going to kill a fly.
Yeah.
But I am also I think of it this way. I'm like the hunter that says a prayer before he kills the deer with a bow and arrow. I think that's
Okay,
more apt.
yeah, now I'm on board.
I'm recognizing that
Yeah.
this thing died for a cause, and that cause
well,
is that
okay.
I'm less annoyed.
Yeah, I was going to say the cause is very minor. It's not going to feed your family.
Well, you don't know what I did after. Put a little teriyaki sauce on that.
Oh,
bad
and
boy.
it's super
Fry that
crunchy.
up.
You can really taste the poison.
We'll be eating flies in 20 years.
Well, sooner. I had a point here.
No, I don't think you did.
No, I did. I was
Quite
about
frankly.
to make a point. Oh, it's just Darwinism. Let me try that again so I say the word correctly. It's Darwinism. It's a spider that went into the house and recoils at the shutter or whatever and gets away. That's a favorable trait, right? That's avoidance of predators. That spider, if it goes on to survive, is going to pass on that awareness or that gene or that trait into its children. And that spider which doesn't run away or which gets too close to you and causes irritation or fear and gets squashed is going to die. So it is ultimately just natural selection, and you're just breeding very, very slowly a fly that won't come and annoy you indoors, right? So I think it's a net good.
So you're saying that there's the survival instinct doesn't necessarily equate to any sort of sentience that I should really care about.
Well, I mean, I obviously things that are alive, like creatures, have animalistic needs, don't they? They need to eat, they need to reproduce, they need to hunt prey or flee from predators. So obviously there's a consciousness of some form there. It's not a brain or a consciousness at the level of humans or dolphins or pigs or even dogs, but it is, a consciousness.
Yeah.
It's not going to recognize itself in a mirror.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think it's like, I think maybe in the future we'll be thinking about even killing insects in a different way. Like we'll be more, I feel like the way that human civilization is going and ethics is going, we will consider, my guess is that we'll consider killing insects, as more serious than we currently do.
Well, isn't that interesting, though, that if the survival of humanity long term involves us evolving the kind of foods that we eat to be less environmentally impactful when we end up eating more insects, you'd have to assume that alongside that comes much in the same way that there's this awareness now of the cruelties and how they farm chickens and the pigs and that sort of stuff. There'll suddenly be this cruelty around insects as well. Like, are they having the best life they can have before they get deep fried or ground up or whatever the way that we serve our insect meal?
But
you have to
it
assume
is easier with an insect because like an insect's lifespan is like a day. So like they're gonna be like, if as long as they've had like a really good day, they've gone out for a walk in the park,
they saw the sun.
fellow wasp,
Yeah.
as long as it's gone on the Ferris wheel or something, gone scuba diving,
done all the classic wasp activities.
Imagine if wasps' bucket list was like pretty similar to humans.
Yeah, they just want to go zorbing.
What the fuck's that?
Zorbing? When you're in a giant inflatable ball that goes rolling down a hill and you're like on the inside?
Oh, I was thinking of Vortex.
You're thinking of Vortex, also good.
Yeah, also good.
Before I forget, Casey said to tell you, quote,
"Oh God,
tell Michael I said nothing." And
that's funny.
Yeah,
I like it. That's good. We're getting somewhere. We're making progress.
Yeah.
Because it was previously actually nothing, and then it's gone up to saying nothing.
Yeah, I mean, you've still never met in person, so we'll see what that's like. That's going to be a different vibe, I think.
No, well, tell him I said. Oh, there was going to be such a good lead into Welcome to Deep Fort.
Oh, I didn't. I thought you were just leaving a break because it was implicit that you said nothing.
I thought we were in sync.
Welcome to Deep
Band.
Oh, fuck. Okay, count me in.
Well, tell Casey I said.
Welcome to Deep Fort, everybody. Hi, greetings, and hello. We always start this podcast with 3 affirmations, so I'd like to begin that now. You are beautiful, you are intelligent, and you are wanted. Michael, what do you have to say? Your 3 affirmations, please.
I am beautiful, I am wanted, and what was the third one?
Yeah, that's ironic. So this is a podcast sitting through the internet with me today. Michael, hey, how you doing?
All right.
Yeah, and I'm Nick. Hi. It's I've got a strong feeling. I've got a bit of a loopy brain going on tonight. We'll see where this goes. Midweek record, a little bit tired. 9 o'clock on a Wednesday. Everyone knows perfect time to jump on Skype.
Can I say and reluctantly so, that from the brief glimpse of your arm I just got, and I know you just came back from the gym, but you're looking a little swole, my man.
Well, that's ironic because it was leg day, but thank you. Yeah, I'd show you my glutes.
Trickles up. Well, maybe you're, just generally you're looking swole. I'm not sure if I like. I think I prefer lanky Nick, to be quite honest.
Wow.
Like, it just fits more well with my idea of
your
you.
superiority complex.
Like, in my dreams, I will still drink you. Let me take that again. When I dream of you, it will still be lanky Nick.
Yeah, naked or not?
From the
chest up.
From the top up.
You'll still think of me shirtless from the chest up, but in a lanky form.
Yes, but also just the chest up.
Just the
wearing
chest up.
like a corset or something.
Wait, no, clothed on the chest up. Do you mean naked?
No clothes on the corset from like the.
Oh, literally the chest, not the waist.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, gotcha. I'm with you.
Yeah,
well,
like you strapped in like a boot.
Well, that's just what I wore
torso
to
region.
water Christmas a couple of years ago. So that's why that image is stuck in your head.
Yeah, that was a horrific Mrs. Claus that you were. You did. My grandma especially hated that.
Santa baby.
Oh, don't.
Yeah, that's the PTSD comes back.
PTSD. Just on that, just if we're doing tangential thoughts, which I believe we are, on the dream thing, I realized the other day that I only ever dream about my Wayville house. I might have said this to you before.
No, you haven't.
But
your childhood home.
Well, that's the thing. It wasn't necessarily my childhood home, but it was where I like spent my teenage years. But I've only ever, when I've dreamt, and I dream quite often about, home or my family, whatever, it's only ever that particular house. It's never any other house.
That's interesting because I don't think my dreams are in locations. They're always in like a nebulous void, but they're with recognizable people or things or moments. But I'm not like picturing walking down the hallway, turning the kitchen door handle, that I don't have that sense of geography. But I'm also not a visual, like I'm not very good at imagining visual concepts. My brain is like a words brain and a lists brain and like a dot points brain. And I'll enjoy thinking about concepts and I can remember moments and places like that. But I struggle to visualize things just in the brain juice. So that's probably why I can't think of like a full house.
That is really interesting because that's like the exact opposite of me. But I also thought isn't it? Go on.
Sorry to cut you off. Isn't that one of I can't remember if we've talked about this previously, but there is some people I think don't realize the variance in the ways that people's brains can imagine. And some people go through life and you ask them to think of an apple and they might have the barest, fuzziest red blob of an idea, whereas others will be able to close their eyes and picture the glistening, like, fresh dew on the surface of, like, a pocket-marked, red and yellow thing with a tiny little stem and a sprig of leaf and that, cut perfect sphere that tucks underneath and be able to bring to mind that image. Like when I describe that image, I don't know if that came to your mind, like if you could envisage that, because some people are completely unable to. There's actually a huge scope in the degree in which people can conceive of that kind of stuff, unprompted or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because we can't really compare. Like we can verbally say I imagine this, or I hear this, or I feel this, but all we're using is words to convey our experience of the external world, and that may not necessarily line up. It's like we've talked about, if I see the color blue, are you seeing the color blue? I know we're both labeling this collection of atoms as blue, but does that necessarily mean we are perceiving it in the same way? It's like it's an interesting thing about being human,
Yeah, I'm
or
trying to
about being
find.
like a living being.
Okay, so this is weirdly a bit of like an early science news, but I'll just rapidly go through this concept. So if you were asked to imagine an apple, how much of the fruit would you actually be able to see? That's the core question we're getting at here, right? I sort of jumped to it a bit earlier, which like some people get a blob and some people get a very descriptive or detailed image. Some
Yep.
people literally see nothing. See nothing. Some people,
Right.
you could ask them and they can tell you what an apple is meant to look like. They could list dimensions, they could list where the light hits, the stalk length, the color, markings, but there's no way to see what is being described in their mind. Some people go through
Right.
life not actually being able to visibly bring that image into their consciousness. Whereas, like, I don't know about you, but when I think apple and when we talk about apples, and I think for most of our listeners, statistically, when you imagine an apple and you close your eyes, or even if you keep it open, you are thinking of the picture of an apple, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking of like my instinct is to go to like when you say apple, I think Snow White, and then I think like my apple is like cartoonish.
yeah. So here's a little chart here. Actually, I might grab this tweet here and put it in the chapter title, or maybe I'll put it as an image on this chapter. So if you just open your phone, listeners, and have a look at the image on the screen, this is the kind of variance that you can get from someone getting a shape to a bit of detail to a grayscale all the way to like a full color image. What would you say that you could see?
Cats. Am I meant to be seeing cats?
You should be seeing cats and also your parents fucking.
I'm always seeing that. So, but is this an indicator of some sort of mental like I don't want to say disorder like or
No,
just
well,
like
I think it's
or
just a variance, like a genetic variance. So people can like the people in Team 5 can conceptualize things in their head, but can't see a proper image when they close their eyes. This is called aphantasia, which is
Right.
basically a lack of a functioning mind's eye. So you can't visualize things mentally.
What a beautiful word.
Aphantasia. Yeah, it's a bit like meiosis, right?
Hmm.
I think I'm definitely sort of in the one. Like I said, when I was describing those in quite a bit of detail earlier, I was visualizing that at the same time. The other thing that's come up in this article as well is some people have an internal narrative and some people don't. As in, some people's thoughts are sentences they quote unquote hear.
Yeah.
And some people just have abstract, non-verbal thoughts and have to consciously verbalize them. And most people probably don't realize that the other one's an option. So I'm definitely a person who has abstract thoughts and then just sort of says things. But I think some people hear a sentence in their head already as a thought.
Well, this is very interesting. And it could be a good lead into maybe talking about psychologist stuff as well. But yes, I think my inner dialogue is, I mean, I talk to myself quite openly and aloud, but I'm usually having conversations. I'm either having conversations with people in my head, or I'm saying things out loud that are in my head. Like I feel like it's important for me to
So are you hearing
verbalize what's
sentences? You're like it's coming through to you as like a sentence in your head?
It depends what I'm doing. Sometimes maybe other people do this, but sometimes I need to. It's like a form of. I guess it's like a form of self therapy. But if I'm going through like a conflict, say personally, with a relationship that I have with someone that I know, I find it helpful to rehearse what I'm going to say. So that's one separate thing. But then it often devolves into actually having a conversation and hearing what the other person would say and then replying. And then it's kind of takes on a life of its own. Does that make sense?
So once you're involved in a conversation, it's sort of reactive. You're not really having to listen to your brain think and then repeat it.
Yeah, well, I try and imagine what the other person would say, like in a
Sorry,
realistic
this
setting.
is still in advance of a conversation, or is this live?
No, this is not an actual conversation.
Okay,
This
so
is a
sure.
made up imaginative conversation.
Yeah. So what my question was, in a real conversation, do you
Right.
get lost in the conversation? Like you're just reacting, you're not really hearing things and saying them aloud. You're just instinctively following the conversation and then chipping in without you consciously realizing what you're thinking.
Are you asking me if I've thought about this a particular conversation prior and then am going
No,
in
I'm
with
talking
like,
about right now. We're having a conversation. Are you just in the zone? Are your brain's kind of just doing its own thing and chipping in a response? Or I mean, now that we're talking about it, you're thinking about it, so it's kind of skewed the sample.
no, no,
But
no, no. I am definitely doing the first. Like I'm
yeah,
reacting in the moment,
yeah,
and when I'm having these fake or imagined conversations, they are purely like therapeutic.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that's common. I think I do that sometimes as well. I'm sure a lot of people do as well, where you have the it can be what's the opposite of retrospective? Well, maybe it is retrospective. It can be after an event where you wish the chat had gone differently, and you say the things you wish you'd said, or you've given yourself now the time to respond properly, and
Yeah.
you sort of relive that moment better. But
Yeah.
you're saying that you also prepare for conversations by like iterating out the ways it could go.
I think primarily it's the former, as everyone does, I guess. But also, I imagine this is really embarrassing, but I imagine having. I think everyone maybe does this to a certain degree as well. But I imagine having like some saying something that makes everyone laugh,
Yeah.
and like I really. This is really embarrassing. This is
Oh,
really
you want me
embarrassing.
to stop you from saying it?
Can you stop me from saying it? No,
Hey,
it's actually
no, don't.
it's
Some
actually
things are
it's not a,
private. Here, let me
yeah.
pause the recording. Click. Okay, this is a safe space now, Michael.
I will like usually in the shower like try and imagine like saying something like to you or to like one of my friends that is like cracks everyone up. Like, I really do. That I think
did
that
that get
to
you
me
anything?
on some level is oh right that was a no because I could tell it wasn't real.
Okay.
When I mean I love to earn a Nick laugh. Don't get me
Oh,
wrong. I
okay.
love you're one of the guys. There's like a couple of peeps in my life that I really love to make laugh, and you're definitely one of them.
Oh, that's very sweet. Do you think
It
that I'm a
is.
hard person to laugh? I feel like I'm quite an easy laugh. Or is
When
it
you
just like a
really laugh,
friendship
because
closeness?
no, it's like because I think I mean I would never say this to your face, but I think on some level I respect you
Oh,
a lot, and
it's lucky I'm
edit
not
this out.
recording.
And I think like earning, you know, some people in your life, when you earn a laugh from them, it means more than others. And
Yeah.
like, I'm not talking about like, you know, like just like a ha ha ha, like whatever bullshit you just did. I'm talking about, you know, you've got a really quite ugly, abrasive laugh. When I get that really like sharp, like, ugh, gross, like that to me is like, mwah. Like I've,
That's when
you
you
know,
know
when
you've
you've
made it.
got the involuntary
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because I've been doing lots of writing with Good Grief, with for Good Grief with Grace and Eve, and just spending hours and hours all day, 5 days a week on Skype. which is hardly a difficult job in the grand scheme of things, but it's also one where you're trying to be funny over Skype. And if it's like the 7th hour in on a Thursday and you're trying to be funny, sometimes it's an uphill battle. And then when you do get those moments where something just clicks and it all falls together and you're pissing yourself laughing, it feels like there is that rush of endorphins, right? Like laughing and it is a shared experience, and it's really satisfying. So I totally get what you're saying. When you can make someone laugh in that kind of situation, it's a rush.
Well, it must be so hard as well to do it over Skype, because so much of comedy lives in the room.
Oh.
Come on. Come on. Timing. So much of the comedy
going there.
So much of the comedy lives in the shared, like the physical space. Like you hear comedians talk about, the room, and the room is often a room with a small ceiling, and it's kind of intimate. That's where like the laughter is contagious.
Yeah.
And so it can bounce off the walls. And if you're in a stadium, if you're Kevin Hart and just like saying shit out, pushing it into the wind, like it's a whole different thing. But comedy is like, and I'm not saying that, what you're doing with your friends is, I mean, you are literally writing a comedy.
Yeah.
What, like me just trying to make my friends laugh is not comedy per se, but it is laughter that lives inside a physical space. And so being able to, I mean, you must lose some of it not being in the room with your writing partners. Like a lot of it is being lost. Trying to connect over Skype and have that momentum and energy is difficult to maintain through technology.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're slightly better placed in some ways because we've never written scripts, the three of us in the same room. Never.
Right.
We've always had at least one of us separate. Yeah. So we've kind of worked out the rhythms of how it suits us. But you're right. There is definitely something more visceral about being in the same room. What I'm curious about, because we're veering towards it, is in that kind of conversational setting when you're just with the friends and you're having a conversation, do you have a conscious thought, I'm going to say something funny, or I'm going to try and make Jack laugh, or whatever? Or do you find that it's just instinctual, that you'll just see a line or see an opportunity and go for it without any realization of like what a goal this is? It's like it just sort of comes to you and you do it.
Yeah, if you sometimes it's both. Sometimes you think of something and it's just like, I have to say this, and then you're just like waiting for that right gap in the conversation just to get it in, and it's like always hard to like actually time that. But I think for the most part it's just like, I mean, it's like semi a problem that I'll just like say whatever comes into my mouth.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so whatever comes into my head.
Yeah.
And then
it goes
the head
into your
passes
mouth.
it to the mouth.
Yes.
I am
the knee
aware
bone's
of
connected
biology.
to the thigh bone. Yes.
Yeah. Are you the same? Do you don't have a problem with just going blah?
No, I'm pretty.
You're a thoughtful guy.
I'm controlled in that way. I'm also aware of some situations where you have to modulate your behavior. So like if I was meeting new people or in a job situation, I can consciously think, let's behave this way, or let's this isn't the time for that joke, even though it's funny.
Yes. I think for me, for a long time, as you well know, that like saying the wrong thing, even if it was just, it wasn't even clever or whatever, just saying the wrong thing that would get a reaction out of people, I valued so much. Or I got a kick out of just seeing, even if we had just met, people that we didn't know, saying something offensive or shocking, and just seeing them react would give me a big thrill. Now it doesn't so much. Like, I mean, I do, in a sense, I still do appreciate a bit of that, but now I think it's only when it's like really clever and not just for the sake of upsetting someone
Yeah.
or getting a reaction out of someone. Like if it's targeted and thought out to some degree, I'll pay it and
Yeah.
I love it. But if it's not like, what I was, what I would
That's a bit
used
of
to
a
do in the
maturity
last.
thing as well, right? Like that's
Yeah.
you thinking about the kind of person you're interacting with, B, the opportunity they've teed up, and C, like the subject matter you can go for. And I feel like you've evolved to a place where you're more willing to just step into what in a conversation or in a casual acquaintance territory can be considered risky topics or areas like that. Like you'll just you're not phased by the idea that this is a sensitive area and you'll go into it more than you'll say something deliberately like provocative or offensive just for shock
Yeah.
value. It's more like I think now you're just willing to push people out of their comfort zone in a pointed way or a deliberate way, right?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I mean, I still very much enjoy the type of comedy that is taboo and um, is said from the back of the classroom in a sense, like the stuff that you're not meant to say. I mean, and especially now with everything being so hypersensitive, it's like kind of that kind of comedy is even more like, I don't want to say it's not precious, but it's like more. It feels everything feels more taboo now, and I do very much enjoy that type of comedy. But if it's just said for shock value, and with no real substance behind it, I don't find that funny.
Yeah,
It's
or
just
worthwhile.
it's objectively not that funny.
Yeah.
But there is a place for it
Yeah.
if done correctly, which I just never found out how to do.
Well, that might tee us up to something that you touched on a moment earlier, which was the psychologist.
Yeah, start seeing a shrink,
Yeah.
which is the best part about seeing a psychologist. You get to say shrink.
Yeah, how do they respond
Ah,
to
my
that?
my shrink. Not good. I honestly don't know what to call him. Like when I talk about him, when I talk to him about telling other people that I'm seeing a professional, I still don't know what to call him because I think therapist is Americanized
Really?
and
Counselor?
psychologist seems counselor seems like
Seems like a bit wishy-washy.
a priest
Is he a
that's
psychologist?
about to fuck me. Yeah, he's a psychologist.
Then why don't you just say I'm seeing a psychologist?
I don't know. Didn't feel. I want
That,
like
that
a
does
cool
that
way
feel
to
like
say
the
it.
other side of the spectrum, where that's like making it sound like a little bit more serious or medicinal?
Well, potentially. I mean, my. Not sure if I should be repeating this, but my. So I had a conversation with my dad. So bit of stepping back a bit. So I've had a complicated last couple of weeks, to the point where I didn't even thought about I didn't want to even do this podcast this week. I won't go into it now. I haven't even told you, but we've kind of alluded to it over text, but maybe down the track. But I had an interesting conversation with my dad a couple of weeks ago when I've been going through something, and I told my dad that I had started to see a psychologist. Just in passing, really. And his reaction was, "Oh shit!" And I had to be like, "No, no, 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 it's good. Like
Yeah.
I'm getting out
So was that a
ahead of the
concern?
problem.
Right.
I'm getting out ahead of the problem. I'm like trying to solve it." But his reaction to it was, "Oh my god, something must be so wrong," and something isn't like completely wrong. But it was interesting to hear his reaction be so taken aback by it all.
Did that
where
were you did you resent that reaction, Or do you just see it objectively and just think, oh, that would have been a surprise?
Well, I did see it. I did see it objectively, and it did. It, to be honest, immediately it kind of. I think it did. Um, give me pause for thought at least, but I was very quickly able to contextualize it, and I mean that's been part of the process of maturing for me and growing up into an adult man, has been recognizing the faults in my parents, recognizing that they did fuck up in some ways, and not resenting them for it. Because I feel like part of parenting is you're going to fuck up your kids.
Yeah.
No matter what. And it's how you fuck up your kids the least. That's a good parent.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's true to a degree.
Or
and
if you can fuck up your kids, yet still in them instill the ability for them to cope with it, right?
Exactly.
Like for them to have the tools at hand to be better than you, or to overcome whatever they've been saddled with.
That's exactly right. And I mean that, I guess that's the essence of parenting as well. It's giving your kids a better life than you had. I don't think you can argue with that.
No.
And I think my parents did do that. So I don't resent them for that. But I think there is also an element to it where there is, there are issues that remain unresolved in myself, in my personality, in my emotionality, that have reared their head in some way in my adult life, which I don't like. And I now am attempting to fix those things.
Yeah.
Attempting to fix those things. I'm making an effort to fix them.
Which is amazing.
And to hear like a kind of oh, what's wrong with you kind of reaction did very quickly after hearing it make me feel like, well, I mean, it's your fault. Like, I mean, don't have that reaction when like it's, I'm trying to learn how to be somewhat emotionally articulate, because I was never given the framework or the emotional vocabulary to do so, or it was valued,
or the modeling of how to,
the modeling to express yourself, or because it was not, there was no value placed on that. The idea that it was like, oh, is kind of like, I mean, I'm trying to fix the problem. You're not even recognizing there is a problem.
Do you think that's because a parent's reaction to that might be, what are you saying about what I did? Like it feels like an accusation, even if it's not, even if it is. It's both.
But that's the thing. Like,
it's not a blame.
I think it's totally right. I mean, it would be natural to feel like, oh, you think that we screwed you up, which I don't feel screwed up, but we're all kind of screwed up in our own way. I mean, there's a generational thing here, and I think that that's a totally valid concern to have as a parent, that when they grew up, when people went to psychologists and therapists, it was for something really bad, or they were going mad or something, or they were depressed.
Yeah.
And now it's ubiquitous, and there is, the momentum has shifted the other way, to where it's like, well, everyone really should go to seek professional help, or, at least investigate it at some point. It's not going to do any harm.
No, it's like going to the dentist. Like, it's
Exactly.
a checkup, right? It's interesting as well, because even as all of that is true, and there might be a generational thing, I think the important context is they are still more aware than their parents were. Like, you go back 2 generations to the grandparents era, to the the early 1900s, or through the wars and that kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
that era of emotional awareness, expression, it is even more repressed than
Yeah.
the parents that we're talking about, right? So in some
Yeah.
ways, yes, they're doing the best that they can, but they've also come a long way from where their parents were. And our kids will look at us and be like, "Oh my god, geez, just fucking say what you think," like it is
So
like a progression.
I think for me, it's just like this. What I'm looking for in my parents, or what I would, what would be ideal, would be at least just like a willingness to explore new territory, or explore, this idea that people might need to, I don't know, talk about what they're going through. Like, just an open mindedness would go a long way for me. And also, like, to what you said before, I get it. Like, the generational thing, like, people went through some really tough shit. We have it better than any other generation before us. So now we have the luxury to, talk about our problems and feel our feelings. Before that, it was survival.
It really
So I
was.
get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You don't have time. You don't have time to think about how
And
depressed you are.
to be even more blunt, it's a current day privilege of the rich and the white and the
Exactly.
well off. It's there are still plenty of people this day and age who don't have the mental time, the mental space or the time to consider that either, because it is so hand to fist still.
Exactly. And I mean, it makes perfect sense. But you do see, I mean, it's not just everyone. It's not all boomers that think, that put value on just shoving your feelings down.
Mm-hmm.
But, and not to lay blame at my parents, which I wouldn't do. But so, I mean, what I'm looking for is some acknowledgement that there was an issue stemming from childhood and the way were raised. Acknowledgement would go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
But what I feel is they are completely unwilling to actually acknowledge that there is any issue, and that any acknowledgement would be implicitly blame.
Mm. Is this either on or off the pod an issue that you could verbalize, as in what you feel like the thing that you want acknowledged, or the misstep was? Or if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine.
No, no, I'm fine talking about this. But for me, it's the main issue that I feel like has manifested as an adult, and the prime reason why I went to seek professional guidance was that we were raised not to express our emotions. We were raised to it was valued, actively valued, that you suck it up and shove it down.
Gotcha.
I mean, that was actively valued in our house.
Mm.
And I do believe that a certain degree of that is admirable. This stoicism, maybe you could call it. But I think you do leave yourself open to growing up into adults that can't articulate themselves emotionally. And that can cause problems, not just for you, but for the relationships that they build with other people.
Yeah.
And I have found that very much in my own life, which is, the reason why I wanted to, explore this avenue. It wasn't necessarily because I was feeling repressed, although I was repressed. It was because when you start to cohabitate with someone and you start to live with someone else, that person holds a mirror up to your, for lack of a better word, defects, and they start to become really apparent, and it starts to have an effect on them. And I think if you're a conscientious person, at least a little bit, you think you don't want to, you want to at least try and fix that issue.
Yeah.
And I think the value placed on just sucking it up is overall a relic of the past, and something that we needn't continue forward, or needn't value going forward.
And it's probably a holdover again from a survival kind of circumstance, where if you start, being angry at the world, or depressed, or depressed is not in a clinical sense, just like caught up in those kind of feelings, then you actually are unlikely to survive, because you're not focused on the immediate threats or pressures that you need to solve.
Exactly.
Right? But as you say,
and just to add here as well, coming from immigrant families as well, that's another thing on top of that. I mean, my dad was second generation, I think, or first generation, however that works. His grandparents came
the
from
first generation.
Literally came from like fucking.
Wait, his grandparents or his parents?
Sorry, his parents.
Yeah, his first generation.
And my mum, my mum's dad came from Sri Lanka, and her mum from Wales. So they have gone through it, and it is it's understandable. But yeah, like I said before, I mean, I would be interested to know how your relationship is with your parents in that regard, especially given how you went through a traumatic personal, I don't know if you want to call it enlightenment or a change, or
You mean starting to go to the gym?
I mean, getting swole. Like, how did you come out to your parents as a gym junkie?
I said, guys, there's something I need to tell you. And
they're like, here we go again.
Here we go again. I like looking at myself in the mirror. We know you're gay. No, for other reasons.
God.
It's interesting because I do agree with what you're saying, right? Where so much of it is generational, and I find it hard to really blame any of my parents, but I think a natural part of growing up, right, for everyone is probably in your teenage years, or maybe early 20s, when there's a little bit of separation there, a little bit of equality, and you're an adult, I'm an adult. You start to realize, oh, my parents are humans, just like every other human. Just like how there are shitty humans in my class, just how there are shitty friends who, stole my GameCube game. You're a shitty...
Stole your Pokemon card.
My Pokemon cards, which he never acknowledged. Is that right? Never heard from him?
Never read it. Never even read it.
Never even read it.
He knows.
He knows what he did. One of those first steps of adulthood is realizing, oh, they're just humans, and that's its own like realization of they were just making it up, like they were doing their best, and they had their own shit that was guiding the way they were reacting to situations, and we're lucky that we are further ahead than they are in the world, because the world is better now than it was then, and all that kind of stuff. And then I think the second level of realization, which is again just like maybe another 10 years on, which probably comes about from you being more experienced in the world, or having met more people, or being in relationships yourself, or having kids yourself, is the realization of, oh, I think I actually can now recognize what specific idiosyncrasies or quote unquote flaws, or bad habits that they manifested, or that they have, right? Like in an abstract sense, I think at the start you're just kind of like, but mum said I could do this, and then she said I could do that. That's so not fair. Like that's like, there's like a very sort of situational awareness. And I think with time you just get a better picture of people, right? And you can start to see, oh, I understand that you don't You never had the opportunity to do this, so you resent that, or your mum was withholding, so like, I don't know, whatever. I'm just making shit up, but you see the sort of the patterns of behavior with time as well, right? Where again, that then helps you recognize in yourself where some of your idiosyncrasies and behavior patterns come from, right?
Right.
Like in a fairly innocuous example, like I like a clean house. I like an ordered house. I like it tidy. I don't want to do half a job and finish, and then leave it undone. I think that's definitely from mum's side, because she was always cleaning. She was always tidying. She wouldn't let us leave stuff on the table. If we left stuff on the table and said, I'll put that away once I've just, finished watching this episode or finished my homework, by the time you came back 15 minutes later, it had already been moved, even though you were going to do it. Like that kind of thing is definitely something where I now am living in a house with someone else, and KC is not that way inclined. And to be fair, it was also true once you go flatting as well with other people. But you have that moment of like, wow, I think I'm quite anal about this stuff. Like,
No, I'm the exact same way. It's like my mum was, if you left a dish out, like sometimes you'd be cleaning and you'd leave a spoon out to go taste and then come back and it'd be gone.
Yeah.
By the time you turned around.
Yeah.
And then when you move into a place where your mum's not there and things aren't neat and tidy all of the time, and the person that you're living with doesn't value that as much, you're just like, hey, what the hell? Like,
why is this spoon here?
What's going on with you?
Yeah.
My mum would always clean up the spoon. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, and then part of you, like, and then I guess a conscientious or empathetic person or inward thinking person then looks at that and goes, okay, let me take a step back here. What is actually my objective thoughts on this standard? Do I need it to be always a clear table, or does it not bother me? Could I meet somewhere in the middle, or do I need to either A, proselytize this way of life and convert them to my standards, or, B, find someone who's a better fit with me, so it's like you're on the same page, right? Like some of those considerations then apply to yourself.
Yes. And yeah. So I've gone through 3 sessions with this guy, who I picked, by the way, based on image alone.
I mean, you want a hot psych. You want a hot psych. You want to be able to look him in the eyes.
Well, honestly, it's more fucked up.
When he's holding your feet and stroking you because you're, sobbing on the couch, you want a hot guy.
Well, I mean, we've never met in person. This has all been over teleconference.
Right.
So that's one thing. That's actually one reason why I put it off for so long, because I thought that it wouldn't be real. Like, whenever I start a session with him, I'm like, let me just record this, mate. We'll make a podcast out of it at some point.
Do you actually record it?
No, are you kidding?
Because I could imagine a world in which, like, going back to hear an explanation of something again would be very valuable.
I mean, I actually think that's a great idea, and maybe we could start a podcast together.
I wasn't suggesting that, but having a record of it seems sensible to me.
It would be funny just to throw him a complete curveball at the start of the session and just say, "Hey, mate, these conversations have been great. You thought about monetizing it?
If we get 300 downloads, we can get Manscaped on board."
I have a contact already, because we almost got
there.
We will one day. Have you seen that we're losing even more Facebook followers?
I haven't looked.
Don't look. I've gone through 3 sessions with this guy, and the most useful thing that I've gotten out of it has been, I mean, they don't tell you what to do. He made that very clear, because I asked. Just tell me what to do. But the most useful thing is that they just break everything down that you're doing and reflect it back to you. And it's kind of like just dividing everything by two until it reaches the root cause, or the square root, maybe that's a better way. And then once you realize the thing, once you realize the cause, or even if it's just a suggested cause, then you're like, the realization is good enough to make you think about it differently.
Right.
It's a very weird thing.
It's you can understand why people are skeptical of it because it feels wishy-washy, right? But do you feel like you're getting insight from him, or do you feel like you're being guided to reaching insights you could make about yourself?
Great question. It's become clear to me that the answers that I wanted going in, I already knew. And I felt like I was unable to either admit them to myself or articulate them to myself or express them. And I think part of this is a narrative that I have built up in my head, which is that I've kind of displayed it to you, that I felt like I don't have an emotional vocabulary. I don't know how to express myself. The thing that he said to me in my first session was, and I told him exactly that. I feel like I'm emotionally inarticulate. I don't know how to express myself. At the end of our first session, he said, Michael, you said this at the start of our session, and to me, that's not apparent at all. You've talked for 50 minutes. You've expressed yourself very clearly. Is it possible that maybe you just needed an excuse, or you needed a particular person to verbalize these thoughts that you have? So that was quite confronting in a way, and also amazing to hear it back. And since then, it's kind of blossomed even further, to the point where, I always write things down going in, and I write things during the session and think about them later. And it has been, even in 3 sessions, immensely helpful, even if it's just giving me the confidence of my own feelings and thoughts and emotions, the confidence that I can express myself, or I think doubt. I'm an expert in second guessing myself, and I think once you have the tools to be able to express yourself in whatever capacity, it makes it easier to it makes things a lot easier. Anyway, sorry, I have rambled a lot here.
Thank you for talking about it. It's interesting that you say, well, it's interesting what he said, really, because for as long as we have been, or at least for the several years now on this podcast, you have been incredibly self-reflective, and I think it should have been apparent, not perhaps to you, but to me, that the times that you were talking about your troubles verbalizing your emotion, that the fact that you were saying that kind of suggested at least you were some way of the way there, right? Right. So it's funny to hear him say that and to go, if we just spent 40 minutes talking about the ways that you had reacted to your father's comment, and then the ways that he and what he'd done, had made you feel, then you're sort of doing the thing. So it's interesting to hear him say, like, well, maybe it's more like confidence is not the right word, but like a freedom or a license to go through that or go into that process is what's most most welcome.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the other thing was in that first session, He was like, so what do you like to do in your spare time? And I say, I like to make music. I do a podcast. He's like, what's the podcast about? And I'm like, oh, we just talk about thoughts and feelings and topical things. He's just like, okay. And I've just like completely come right out the gate with this. I don't know how to express myself. So it's just obviously this thing that I thought in my head, and I just had this idea of myself, and maybe that's like, maybe to some degree that's like a defense mechanism, saying I can't express myself doesn't allows me to not express things that maybe will be negative or cause negative actions.
If you tell yourself that you can't, then it means that you don't. But yeah, perhaps, as you say, maybe it is more like an aversion to the... I mean, I don't know why I'm trying to be your psychologist right now, but it's just interesting.
You're about to be on the money.
It's like an aversion to saying what's really hurting or causing the emotions because of the risks of what might happen afterwards.
I think that could be totally correct, and also if something negative comes up that you might need to deal with, saying that you don't have the tools to be able to express yourself makes it so that you don't need to.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's definitely something as well, where it's like I can get very caught up sometimes in that like anxiety brain, in like minor ways. I'm not really having panic attacks. I don't say I shouldn't have said not really. I'm not having panic attacks or anything like that, and haven't for a long time. But there is still just a part of my brain which is wired that way to be catastrophizing, to be worrying about things. For one example, I sent Grace, actually, from Good Grief, I sent her a happy birthday message on the weekend past, because it was in my calendar and we talked about it, and I'd put it in my calendar, and then it came up and I was like, hey, you're smart and you're talented and it's great fun to work with you, like, happy birthday. And she responds, ha 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 ha, it's not my birthday. And I was like, oh, we were talking about it. It was the 8th, right? It was the 8th.
That's
and
so
put it in the
funny.
calendar. And I was
It's
like,
funny if it's not her birthday, and it's funny if she's fucking with you.
yeah. And it was actually not her birthday. It's in November. I messaged in October, and it is November. So I was a month early. And I was like, I checked with you. I put it on the calendar, and anyhow, I fucked it up. And so then I sent this message back. I was like, she said, oh, well, you got in ahead. Like, you don't have to say it next month. And I was like, oh, I'll just take it back. You're not funny and you're not talented. And I sent it.
Reverse it.
And I sent it away. And then I didn't hear anything back. And I didn't hear anything back. And I didn't hear anything back for an hour, for 2 hours. Then it became the afternoon. Then it became 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock. By this point, I was convinced that I had actively pissed her off, that it was a real problem. I was drafting notes as to like send a text to say, hey, I'm sorry.
What?
I went like, I was just trying to be funny and I went a little bit far, and I'm sorry if it didn't read the right way, but that I think that you're actually funny and you're actually talented. And it was just me, being dumb, and I'm sorry if I caused offense, and I really look forward to, our chats, and I'll be back there on Monday, and, I hope we can put this behind us. And then so I'm drafting this in my head, and then writing it in the notes.
From Good Grief season 2.
Yeah. And then it's getting
to like... great to be on this journey with you, but we can't continue.
Yeah. It gets to like 9:30 at night. And then I get a message from Grace, and it says, oh, just saw this, huh? And and that's what it was. And she just like, sometimes you leave your phone on the bench and it's still unlocked and a message comes through, and
For 6 hours though?
Oh, it was more. It was like 12 hours.
Oh, are we buying that, Nick? Are we buying that?
I don't need this, Michael. and I was like,
no one doesn't look at their phone for 12 hours.
Well, not to check a message from, like, if there's no notification on the message app, right? You just don't see it.
Sure.
That's what I tell myself.
She hates you. I think she hates you.
But like that's what I mean. Like that's where my brain can go.
The catastrophizing.
The catastrophizing side of it. And for as much as I'm aware of it, there's definitely ways in which that manifests, not just in like innocuous ways where it's like, oh, that was dumb. But also in like, well, in relationships, like in active, like larger stake things where your fears about the future or your fears about an interaction or a text just like flicked off to your partner can have like different burdens associated with it than for other people. I don't remember how I got into this train of thought. I'm sorry, but I'm sure it was related to something.
Yeah, the catastrophizing thing is interesting because I have met a few people like that. And yeah, you're one of them, obviously. But yeah, I've never had that thing, but I do worry. I do worry about the future, and it's not a catastrophization of things, but it's like it's usually like self directed. Like I'm not being good enough. I'm shit. I'm gonna ruin this. Maybe it's not I'm gonna ruin this, but like it's more like self-critical.
Yeah.
Than it is like, oh, this is gonna go bad. It's like I'm gonna fuck it up.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your openness and for talking about, which is something that's quite a personal area, and that perhaps some people would not have expected to hear from you, or
well, it was
considered for themselves, nice. Perhaps.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice to be able to talk about it with you, and I hope Jonathan, my psychologist, I hope you're listening.
Did you
shout out to Jonathan?
I hope that you just told him, you just spelled out the RSS feed. It's https://podbean.com, and just gave him a way to listen.
I plugged it. Yeah.
.xml.
Yeah.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, then I am delighted. I hope it was beneficial. You are smart, you are beautiful, and you are welcome. There are plenty more episodes. Michael is moonwalking into the room. There are plenty more episodes in the podcast feed, and they're all just as intelligent and just as moving. So dive in and enjoy yourself. You can also find us on Facebook. There are fewer followers than ever, which means more one-on-one time with us. There's also the Twitter feed. If you want a notification of when it goes live, you can find us on SoundCloud. You can flick us an email to deepthought@gmail.com and tell us your thoughts and feelings. This is a safe space and we welcome them.
Don't do
that. Okay.
I feel like I just went through another fucking therapy session.
That'll be $280, please.
Yeah, it's expensive, hey? How are we rounding this bad boy out?
I've got one question I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Because we're already talking a lot about you. But then after that, I'm so on board for Celeb Net Worth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just want to know how your run went. You were working through September towards running 100Ks. I just wanted to check in and say, hey, it's been 3 weeks and I remembered.
Thanks for remembering. Obviously didn't see my Instagram story.
I'm actually just prompting. I'm prompting you for the podcast.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like I did. I'm just very good at hosting.
All right. Well, yeah, I did the 100Ks, got in there with like a couple of days to spare, and pleasingly, here's the other thing. It was actually almost this time last year that I bought those smart scales, if you remember.
I do.
And I got a shock when I read 85 kilos.
Because that was high then, or
it was high.
Yeah.
That was extremely high, and I had been throughout lockdown not eating as well as I should have.
Yeah.
Not exercising as much as I should have.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other day, I've been running a lot lately, been eating quite well, been cutting back on the booze. Tonight, excluded.
Yeah.
But yesterday, weighed in at under 80 kilos.
Oh, shit.
Which is
Slender
big.
Man over here.
I'm slender. I'm the slender man. Most of that has come in the last month.
Because you
I'm
ran
not gonna
100
lie.
Ks.
Yeah. And it was like a combination of things. Like it was the not drinking
Yeah.
as much, exercising more, eating better. But yeah, lost
You do
five
look very
kilos in
svelte.
almost. Thanks. I think I lost 5 kilos in about a month and a half, which I think is too fast. But you
Well,
can't put
I
a
don't know.
price on beauty.
If you were like fasting and you were eating 3 peas a day and you
Well,
dropped
that's the
5
thing. I am
kilos.
also doing intermittent fasting.
Okay, well then maybe that is slightly too fast. But I think the fact that you were running like 5 Ks a day for an entire month, I think
Yeah.
that's a perfectly reasonable way to lose weight. Like at least that's associated with exercise and with
Sure.
burning fat, not just like complete starvation or tapeworm. Like that seems like
Yeah, well,
if you're going to lose it in that amount of time, do it by running 100 Ks.
Well, I mean, look, the intermittent fasting was something that I had started around late August, but I have found, so I never get hungry in the morning, like ever. And even if I do, I'll have like lately I'll have like a mandarin or a bit of grapefruit or something light. And I've taken the emphasis off like the protein. When I was at the gym, I was like, I got to get like all this protein in.
Yeah.
Taking the emphasis completely off. I'm trying to hit like, a normal amount of protein, but not like excessive amounts before. Have a little bit of mandarin in the morning. Go for a run in a fasted state. I'm buzzing, dude. I'm buzzing after that. I don't need to eat for another hour after I come back from that, right? By that time, it's 1 p.m. Have a lovely salad, maybe a little fry rye, maybe a little chicana.
Okay, I don't think you're saying these words right.
I'm trying to give a little
Spin,
little
a bit of fun spin on it.
culture. Yeah. But then you only need to eat twice a day. Okay? All you fatties out there, you only need to eat twice a day.
Wow.
You don't need breakfast.
Jeez.
It's an old wives' tale that you need breakfast is the most important meal of the day. No, it isn't. You know what the most important meal of the day is?
Education.
There's no education. Education. Science. But yeah,
You are sub
lost a lot of
80.
weight. Yeah.
I'm
I'm actually not at the moment.
sure, but conceptually. I am 88 kilos. I'm 8 kilos heavier than you.
You are fucking obese.
Yeah, my
Honestly.
scales now says that I am.
It's interesting that we're going in different. Like what? So what's your goal?
My goal in terms of my diet, or in terms of like
No.
overall like fitness,
So why have you gained
because I've been
72
working out.
pounds?
So I'm eating more, and I'm eating with a caloric excess to support.
So your goal is
muscle growth.
goal is to get hench. When you went to your trainer, he said, "What do you want to get out of this?" You said, "Get hench."
It wasn't at that point, but it has become that. It was because at the time, the reason that I started going to the gym was off the back of the physio stuff because I was having knee issues. And so I suppose even then it was, yes, I want to gain muscle because the concern from the physio was there wasn't enough strength in my legs, which is what was causing the knee pain stuff. So it was actively actually, I need to gain some strength and some muscle. That is not something you just only do on your legs though. So it is, the trainer's done a full body plan.
Yeah.
And with that is just a diet of eating more. And I was famously skinny as a kid, like notoriously
Scrawny.
lanky.
Scrawny even.
Scrawny would have been generous. I was lanky, and like there would be days where I just like wouldn't eat anything till dinner, where I would sleep in and skip breakfast. I just didn't eat much, and some of that was not feeling like wanting food in the morning, which I think is hereditary because Dad barely eats anything in the morning. But part of that was just, I don't know, not feeling it, not wanting it, not knowing how to. And
So
possibly
do you have
even
more of an appetite now?
well, that's the thing.
Can you develop an appetite?
I think so. So I'm eating over 3,000 calories a day. So that's quite high. And I'm 165 grams of protein a day, something like up that range. So like properly up there.
Jesus.
But I'm also like when I go to the gym, I burn like 5,500 kilojoules or whatever. Like, so it is in the context of if you're working hard and you are burning all of that out, then you need to at least put that much in plus a little bit more so that you can gain something, right? So it's you wouldn't eat 3,000 calories if you were not doing any exercise, right?
No.
That's so huge. It's in that context. But yeah,
I mean, I'm on 1900 just for context.
Yeah.
As a caloric deficit.
Yeah, trying to decrease. Yeah.
So if I'm trying to hit 1900 or under, to lose weight, which has worked. Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, like as someone who's always historically been underweight, it took a while at that level to build up, and we didn't start there. Like I have increased over time up to those levels, but at the start, just learning to eat more was a very unnatural thing, right? Like just having slightly bigger portions, or eating foods that were denser or that had a little bit of good fat in it, that kind of stuff. I wasn't eating enough volume to get there. But yeah,
so as eating enough to keep going at your current physique at that time, but now you're actively changing your physique.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't exercising at the levels that I am today, so I didn't need that much more food. Like I wasn't burning it out and getting hungry. Whereas now it's like I said, if you're burning 5,500 kilojoules or whatever, you'll be hungry afterwards.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you're looking good. It's interesting to try and reconcile the image you have of someone because most people don't change their physiology, or they don't. It doesn't happen in like real time that it's discernible. It's kind of like watching, I don't know, the sun move.
Yeah.
Usually, as some people get older, they're like, oh, that person's gotten fatter and fatter and fatter.
Yeah.
Or, the other way, although it usually doesn't go that way. But like trying to reconcile, okay, I know Nick as quite, let's say scrawny, because that's what it was.
Yeah.
And then looking at you now, I still have that image in my head of you when I first met you, and that's the Nick that I know.
Yeah.
But then now you are visibly different, but it kind of jars with the image in my brain that I have of you. So I'm seeing you as bulkier, and you look good, and you sent me a photo of you topless, and I jerked off to it. But you look different, but my brain is still not registering it. Like I said before.
Yeah. Well, it's on a screen.
I will not dream of you like this. I will dream of you like that.
And you'll dream of me in your old house.
In my old house. Just the way I like you.
Yeah, I mean that's the other weird. So as I've given up, well, not given up, as the knee stuff and the running has persisted, and I haven't really been able to fix this issue, but I've fallen into this gym routine, which I've actually grown to like quite a lot, and found enjoyment in that. It's one of the other sort of motivating factors is legitimately I've been away from Australia for coming up on 2 years now. Well, like from Adelaide, from a lot of people at least.
Wait, 2 years?
Yeah. So I saw you in April, but I'm in terms of a lot of people in Australia. I haven't been back to Adelaide since Christmas 2019.
Oh.
So yeah, I know. I haven't been to Adelaide for 20 months now. Which is unlikely to change this Christmas either. So by the time I get back there, it will probably be 2 years, 3 or 4 months. And I part of me just is like, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to be like, okay, what is like sincerely going to be fun? Let's see how jacked I can get and go home and see if it's noticeable to people.
I love it. It's definitely going to be noticeable because it's noticeable to me, and I see you once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that'll be super interesting. Like seeing, like the people that you maybe text with. Do you Skype your family?
I Skype my family. Yeah.
How often?
Every week.
What? That's needy.
On which end?
I don't know.
In all directions.
Whoever's starting the
What I really resent is my lack of emotional availability. Oh, you text your family every week? Ugh. Gross.
I still got some work to do, buddy.
I still
got some work.
Still got places to go.